Any whiskey fan worth their salt knows about the Yamazaki 12, and this is not that whiskey because I'm not made of money. This week I'm looking at the Yamazaki Distiller's Reserve. Welcome back to the channel. My name's Matt. I'm a whiskey nerd, and like I said, this week I'm looking at the Yamazaki Distiller's Reserve. So let me get this into the glass and I'll tell you a bit more about it. And if you're new here, why not scroll down, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button. I put a new whiskey review every Wednesday and cocktail recipes every Friday, so subscribe and you'll see them all. Now, why did I mention the Yamazaki 12 if I'm not drinking the Yamazaki 12? Well, very simply, the Suntory whiskey brand exploded a few years ago. Indeed, so did the whole Japanese whiskey market. So a bunch of the older, more classic Japanese whiskies were on the market, suddenly became very popular and suddenly became very expensive to buy because there was no more stock left. In response to this, Suntory started putting out more of the no-age statement versions of these classic whiskies to try and capture some of the flavour without having to spend 12 years aging it, so they could get more whiskey out without kind of compromising on what they were doing. Hence the Distiller's Reserve. So we've got the Yamazaki Distiller's Reserve, the Hakushu Distiller's Reserve, and the Cheetah Distiller's Reserve. Those are the three distilleries owned by Suntory that go into making things like the Toki, go into making things like the Hibiki Harmony, those kind of really top level Japanese whiskies. So it's kind of a way for them to put out more whiskey to keep the market satisfied while they rebuild their stocks. I actually met my wife in Japan and we try and go back there fairly often. So the next time we're back there, I'm definitely bringing a whole suitcase empty so I can just fill it up with bottles of Japanese whiskey, because the secondary retail price is getting very expensive, especially for those age statement whiskies, which are just becoming very hard to find at any kind of decent price. So until I can go back there, I'm going to be sticking with a no age statement version, but a very good no age statement version. So enough talking about the whiskey, let's get into the nose and how it smells. Every time I smell this whiskey, I think of strawberries, I think of raspberries, I think of kind of fresh forest fruit, berries. It's just a note that I think I really get in the Yamazaki whiskey. I have managed to try the Yamazaki 12. It was much more apparent there, it was much more fruitier, more vibrant. So I'm glad to see that in the Distiller's Reserve, in the no age statement version, that same kind of Yamazaki DNA is still apparent, is still very noticeable in the glass. There's also a little bit of kind of dried coconut I'm getting, maybe. Like that kind of dried, toasted coconut. You know, it's a little bit sweet, it's a little bit almost savory. It's kind of edging between, you know, that sweet and savory. It's one of those flavors that just, it's very noticeable once you pick it out, and once you pick it out, you can't stop smelling it. There's also apparent there the note of Mizunara oak, because Mizunara oak, it's very noticeable. It has this kind of sandalwood incense kind of smell behind it. In the same way that an oak barrel might impart flavors of vanilla, the Mizunara oak will impart flavors of sandalwood, incense, that kind of spicy note to it. That's very apparent there. So it's time to go in for the palate. Again, those strawberries, those raspberries, they make a very distinct appearance. It's kind of, if you think of like a sugared strawberry, that kind of nice sweet strawberry, it's not like a fresh strawberry on the palate. It's much more like a kind of a candied strawberry, a candied raspberry, that kind of flavor I'm getting off here. There's also a nice bit of malt, a kind of dark caramelly flavor coming through, maybe a hint of smoke or maybe barrel char coming through as well on the back end. So I'm going to go in again, I'm going to see what else I can kind of pick out there. Something that just hit me there, if you think of a peach, but not like the peach flesh, it's more like the peach skin, you know, that kind of fuzzy peach skin. It's not altogether sweet, it's not altogether dry, I think it's that kind of combination of the Mizunara oak with those sweet juicy berry notes I was getting, that kind of combined to make that kind of peach fuzz notes there. There's also a little bit of peat smoke. Again, I would not call this a peated whiskey by any stretch of the imagination, but I think just that little wisp of peat smoke, that little wisp of smoke coming there at the back end, I think that elevates all the other notes. I think it helps those sweet notes stand out just a bit more just be that bit more brighter, that bit more fresher compared to that peat smoke, because you know there is something else there. There is like a deeper level behind it, but that sweetness is very noticeable. So let's go in again, but we'll talk about the finish. I've often said that Japanese whiskies have a very short finish to me, that you get more of the evolution through the palate than you do into the finish. And I think I stand by that here. I mean, I do think this has maybe a longer finish than the Hibiki Harmony, definitely a longer finish than the Toki. Those sweet notes, they hang around for just a little bit and then they fade away. The peat smoke, it's gone, there's no hint of the peat smoke there, but the spiciness comes through. There's a little bit of those incensey, sandalwood, spicy notes from the Mizunara oak. They kind of hang around. They're probably the notes that stick around the longest after the sweetness fades, after everything else. You get a little bit of a tingle on your tongue. It's a little bit more enjoyable. It's a little denser and more complex than another whiskey from Japan might be. And I think that's where I'm going to leave this review. I mean, it's a very nice whiskey. I don't think it's anywhere as good as the Yamazaki 12. I don't think any whiskey can kind of live up to the reputation of the Yamazaki 12, but the Distiller's Reserve does a good effort. It puts in a good try. It is a nice whiskey. It's an enjoyable whiskey. It's one to savor. It's one to enjoy until you can get your hands on the Yamazaki 12 again, however many years in the future that might be. So I'm going to keep on enjoying this, and I'll see you next time. Sláinte.